The price of honesty in Hollywood? Your career. These men weren't erased by scandal or failure, but by an industry that wasn't ready for their truth. From heartthrobs to rising icons, each had the spotlight until they came out. Why did their stories fade when they should have soared? Today, we uncover the top 10 gay men quietly pushed out of the spotlight. Lee Pace. Too talented, too secretive, too overlooked. There was a time when Lee Pace seemed destined to be Hollywood's next great leading man. With roles in visually stunning projects like The Fall, Pushing Daisies, and The Hobbit trilogy, he possessed both physicality and style. Critics loved him. Directors trusted him. Audiences were drawn to his mysterious charm, his quiet charisma that made him unforgettable on screen. But as his fame grew, so did speculation about his personal life. Who was he, really? Lee Pace didn't appear on glossy magazine covers or carry rainbow flags. In fact, he didn't come out until a 2018 interview, when he reluctantly admitted he dated both men and women. The film industry and the internet were quick to label him gay, even though he had never explicitly labeled himself one. And here's the strange thing. That moment, which should have been a quiet affirmation, a natural continuation of a burgeoning career, seemed to mark the beginning of his invisibility in Hollywood. Was it coincidence or quiet retaliation? Lee never made his gayness a brand. He didn't become an advocate. He didn't join pride campaigns or post political tweets. But as soon as he stopped dodging the question, the energy around him changed. Casting slowed. Titles softened. Studios that once considered him a potential leading man began offering him smaller roles. Supporting roles, independent projects, streaming extras. This wasn't a scandal in the traditional sense. No explosion, no consequences. Just a quiet disappearance. Hollywood has always had a complicated relationship with ambiguity. And in Lee's case, he was in a difficult position. Too private to play a sympathetic gay lead, too openly gay to maintain a fantasy image for straight audiences, and too quiet to rally the LGBTQ+ machine behind him. He wasn't playing the game, and Hollywood didn't know where to put him. Even after he married his longtime partner Matthew Foley in 2022, the media barely noticed. While other gay actors were splashed and headlined on social media, Lee's wedding was quietly buried under Marvel's clickbait. That silence says it all. Because Lee Pace not only lost his voice, he lost his momentum. The roles that were once meant for him disappeared. The high-profile TV series that were supposed to be his stepping stones never materialized. He became a cult favorite, a what happened to him kind of actor. And through it all, Lee remained himself. He didn't care about being a spokesperson. He didn't chase viral interviews. He kept working, still acting, still giving incredible performances, but without the full backing of Hollywood. And perhaps that's what makes his story the most painful. Because when someone as talented, calm, and charming as Lee Pace is quietly pushed out of the spotlight, you can't help but wonder, what is the industry punishing him for? For not cooperating? For speaking the truth? Or is it simply because he dares to exist in a gray area that Hollywood has yet to address? Drop a dot if you think Lee Pace deserves more screen time. Colton Haynes. For an entire generation of fans, his name was the definition of the all-American heartthrob. He had it all. The smile that melted teen magazines, the jawline that secured modeling campaigns, and the kind of magnetic presence that made him stand out in any cast. On Teen Wolf, he was Jackson Whitmore, the cocky jock who grew more layered with every episode. On Arrow, he became Roy Harper, the sidekick-turned-hero arsenal, showing he could hold his own in the comic book world. Colton wasn't just handsome. He was on track to be one of Hollywood's next big stars. But behind the glossy covers and fan edits, Colton carried a secret Hollywood didn't want him to share. From the beginning, There were whispers. Was he gay? Why did he dodge questions about relationships? Publicists worked overtime to keep speculation quiet. Years later, Colton admitted he'd been told to act straight, to never confirm the truth if he wanted steady work. His career, they said, depended on silence. And for a while, he played along. He smiled for cameras, walked red carpets, kept up the image. But silence is heavy, and the longer it lasted, the more it wore him down. In 2016, after years of rumors and personal struggles, Colton finally came out publicly. Fans erupted with love, applauding his honesty, his courage, his vulnerability. But Hollywood's reaction was far quieter. After Arrow, his roles grew sporadic. The once endless opportunities began to dry up. The leading man potential he had was suddenly out of reach. Instead, he was sidelined, appearing in smaller projects, guest spots, the occasional campaign. No scandal, no meltdown, just a slow fade from the spotlight, the kind too many openly gay actors know all too well. The irony is sharp. Colton Haynes had everything Hollywood claimed it wanted: the looks, the charm, the fan base. But the moment he stopped playing the straight idol fantasy and embraced who he truly was, the industry seemed unsure of what to do. Too gay to preserve the mainstream illusion. Too polished and all-American to fit the queer rebel mold. He landed in that uncomfortable middle space Hollywood still doesn't know how to market. And while Colton's personal journey has been powerful, writing a raw memoir speaking about mental health, addiction, and survival, the career that should have soared never reached the heights fans expected. Hollywood didn't cancel him, but it didn't embrace him either. It simply let him drift, a beautiful face with a story the industry didn't want to center. What makes his story sting is that Colton was never short on talent. Beyond the pretty boy image, his performances carried real depth. He could do action, humor, vulnerability, all with ease. Fans saw it. Directors saw it. But when he chose authenticity over image, the system that once courted him chose silence. Today, Colton remains beloved, admired for his bravery, his honesty, his resilience. He's proof that living your truth is more powerful than chasing fame. But his absence from the roles he should have had, the blockbusters, the prestige dramas, the career longevity his early stardom promised, remains one of Hollywood's quiet injustices, because Colton Haynes didn't fade for lack of talent. He faded because the industry wasn't ready to see him for who he truly was. And that silence says everything. Kevin McHale, the voice of a generation, silenced after Glee. If you watched TV in the 2000s or 2010s, chances are you knew him as Artie Abrams, the wheelchair-using, bow-tie-wearing underdog with surprising pipes and one of the most heartfelt storylines on the series. He wasn't the loudest or the flashiest member of the cast, but he was consistent, relatable, and deeply talented. Fans loved him for exactly that. When Glee ended in 2015, Kevin McHale was still young, charming, and vocally gifted. He seemed like a lock for post-show success. Instead, he quietly disappeared from Hollywood's mainstream radar. Why? Kevin never came out during Glee's peak. He kept his private life separate from his on-screen presence. But in 2018, he confirmed his sexuality in a quiet, personal way through a tweet and a follow-up interview where he shared he was happily in a relationship with actor Austin McKenzie. It wasn't scandalous, it was wholesome, joyful, and refreshingly simple, and yet almost instantly he was forgotten. Despite being one of the most musically versatile cast members, with real-life boy band experience in NLT, professional vocal training, and a charisma that carried beyond the stage, Hollywood didn't bite. He released music. He posted content, he stayed connected with fans, but the offers never came. And let's be honest, if Kevin had come out during Glee's run, the backlash could have been brutal. But because he waited and did it on his own terms, there was no controversy, only silence. Some blame Glee fatigue, pointing to the show's chaotic reputation behind the scenes. But other cast members still landed roles, headlined series, or became fixtures in media. Kevin, arguably one of the most musically gifted, did not. It wasn't for lack of trying. He auditioned, he created, he collaborated. But the roles he should have been perfect for, the musical theater crossovers, the quirky sitcom lead, the charming gay best friend, never came his way. And it's hard not to see a pattern. Hollywood sometimes punishes subtle queerness just as harshly as flamboyance. Kevin wasn't outrageous, he wasn't branded a rebel. He was soft-spoken, emotional, and openly proud of who he was, without turning it into a headline. And that quiet authenticity in an industry addicted to clickbait narratives made him easy to overlook. To this day, Kevin McHale still has millions of fans. His voice remains iconic. His comedic timing and heart made him a standout on Glee. And his vulnerability off-screen made him someone viewers rooted for. He didn't mess up. He didn't fade because of scandal. He simply came out. And somehow, that was enough for the spotlight to dim. Drop a 3 if you still know every line from an Artie solo. And if you think Kevin McHale deserved a second act, say it louder. Jonathan Bennett. For millions, his name will always be tied to one role. Aaron Samuels, the high school heartthrob in Mean Girls. With just a smile and a hair flip, he became every teen's crush, the clean-cut leading man Hollywood loved to sell. In 2004, his future looked limitless. He had the looks, the charm, and the instant recognition that could launch decades of stardom. But that future never arrived. After Mean Girls, Jonathan kept working. TV shows, Hallmark romances, reality appearances, but the big roles never came. The blockbusters, the prestige dramas, the network leads all seemed to pass him by. Fans asked, how did one of the most recognizable teen idols fade so quickly? Part of the answer lies in Hollywood's obsession with control. Jonathan was typecast early, boxed in as the pretty boy whose career depended on keeping a straight image. Behind the scenes, he was told to stay silent about his personal life if he wanted to survive. To be marketable, he had to hide. For years, he did. But silence doesn't last forever. In 2017, Jonathan came out sharing his relationship with TV host James Vaughn. It was joyful, authentic, and real. Hollywood's response, however, was muted. He wasn't flamboyant enough to be marketed as a queer icon, but he was too openly gay to continue the rom-com fantasy. That in-between space, Hollywood's blind spot, became his trap. Even when he made history in 2020 starring in The Christmas House, one of Hallmark's first films with a same-sex couple, the milestone passed with little fanfare. Jonathan never stopped working. He hosted Cake Wars, joined Dancing with the Stars, and kept appearing in smaller projects. He stayed visible, but not at the level fans expected. He should have been headlining films, carrying dramas, maybe anchoring a franchise. Instead, he became a trivia memory. Remember Aaron Samuels from Mean Girls? And yet, his resilience is undeniable. He turned his platform into something meaningful, championing LGBTQ+ visibility, living proudly, showing that authenticity matters more than Hollywood's politics. He proved that sometimes the system sidelines you, not for lack of talent, but because you refuse to erase yourself. Today, Jonathan is still loved, still remembered, still the crush from Mean Girls who never lost his warmth or charisma. But his absence from the roles he deserved is a reminder that even now, truth comes with a cost. Because Jonathan Bennett didn't vanish for lack of charm or fans. He vanished because Hollywood wasn't ready to let its teen idol grow into his authentic self. And that silence says everything. Cheyenne Jackson. On Broadway, his name was gold. He was tall, impossibly handsome, with a voice that could shake the rafters and a presence that demanded attention. In shows like All Shook Up and Xanadu, he wasn't just a performer. He was the performer. Critics hailed him as the next great leading man, and fans couldn't get enough of his mix of old-school movie star looks and contemporary charm. For a while, it seemed inevitable that Hollywood would come calling in a big way. And Hollywood did call, just not in the way anyone expected. Cheyenne found himself in guest arcs on shows like 30 Rock and Glee, playing roles that showcased his comedic timing, his charisma, and of course, his voice. He popped up in movies here and there, from indie dramas to campy comedies. But the leading man trajectory that seemed so natural on stage never translated on screen. Despite having every quality studios claim to want: looks, talent, versatility, Cheyenne Jackson was quietly shuffled into supporting roles, side characters, or cameos. Part of it, undeniably, was timing. Cheyenne came out publicly in 2005, at a moment when Hollywood was still deeply uneasy about openly gay leading men. Unlike some stars who hedged or played coy, Cheyenne never pretended. He was honest about who he was, who he loved, and what he stood for. That honesty won him respect from fans, but it also limited the way the industry chose to see him. He wasn't allowed to be the straight rom-com hero. And he wasn't packaged as the queer rebel either. He existed in that same uncomfortable middle ground that so many talented gay actors find themselves trapped in. Even when Cheyenne should have been celebrated, the spotlight dimmed. He starred in Behind the Candelabra alongside Michael Douglas and Matt Damon, a project that earned Emmys and acclaim. But his own contribution was largely overlooked. On American Horror Story, he played multiple roles across several seasons, proving he could handle dark, complex material. Yet instead of elevating him, the show seemed to use him as an interchangeable piece of its ensemble. Never a breakout, never a headline, always just on the edge of the conversation. It wasn't scandal or failure that slowed him down. It was silence. The same silence that greets so many openly gay actors who don't fit in neat boxes. Cheyenne wasn't marketed as a symbol, and he didn't want to be. He was simply a performer who loved his craft. But in Hollywood, where visibility is currency, refusing to play the branding game comes at a cost. Today, Cheyenne Jackson is still here. He's acted, he's sung, he's raised a family with his husband Jason Landau, and he's been a steady presence on stage and screen. He's beloved by fans who know his talent runs deeper than the roles he's been given. But for an actor with his gifts, his career feels like a case study in how Hollywood mishandles authenticity. Because Cheyenne Jackson should have been a star on the scale of Hugh Jackman, a Broadway powerhouse who could effortlessly cross into film, television, and music. Instead, he became a that guy actor. Instantly recognizable, always good, but rarely given the space to shine at the level he deserves. His story isn't one of collapse, it's one of quiet sidelining, of a man too gifted to ignore, but too openly himself for Hollywood's outdated system to fully embrace. And maybe that's the part that stings the most. Because Cheyenne Jackson didn't vanish, he didn't fail. He simply lived honestly, and Hollywood once again wasn't ready. Max Emerson, the gay internet icon Hollywood left behind. In the heyday of YouTube creators and early Instagram influencers, Max Emerson was one of the first openly gay men to build a large audience thanks to his sexuality, not in spite of it. He was bold, witty, and often shirtless. His modeling work attracted attention, but it was his honesty that kept people coming back. Whether posting humorous vlogs, political commentary, or addressing gay issues in Hollywood, Max made you feel like you were part of something. A movement, a moment. But where did that moment go? Max was at the height of his fame. He has an enviable physique, a bright personality, and a fearless attitude that sets him apart from the typical polished image of gay celebrities. He doesn't just post stories about sexual desire, he speaks the truth. In 2017, he co-wrote, produced, and starred in Hooked, an honest indie drama about queer youth homelessness. And it wasn't a vanity project. Max went on a promotional tour to raise awareness and funds for real LGBTQ+ shelters. He took a risk, he used his platform, he made a splash. And then, things went quiet. Unlike many gay actors who play it safe to maintain their appeal during casting, Max always led with his identity, and it may have cost him. Hollywood, for all its rainbow whitewashing of pride, still favors safe gayness, quiet gayness, gayness that can be accepted by middle-class America. Max is not. He's opinionated, sarcastic, uncensored, and the industry doesn't know what to do with it. Despite his talent and charisma, the big roles never came. Streaming shows that were supposed to be tailor-made for someone like him chose other people. Even the campaigns that once welcomed him seem to have fallen by the wayside. Was it his content? His activism? The fact that he's never been shy about talking about sex, body image, and queer trauma? Or maybe it's because Max has never cared just about being liked. He wants change. And in an industry obsessed with image, that's dangerous. Even on social media, where he was once a household name, his posts have become less noticeable. Algorithmic penalty, cultural fatigue, either way, the silence is deafening. Today, Max is still creative, still funny, still proud, still sincere. But the mainstream media that once courted him has completely ignored him. And that's the point. Max didn't self-destruct. He wasn't canceled. He just didn't play the game. And because of that, he was quietly erased. Leave a comment if you remember his name and think the world should too. And if you believe stories like Max's deserve to be heard more, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell, because together we can keep these voices alive. Russell Tovey. For years, his name carried a quiet promise on British television and stage. A promise that seemed poised to cross the Atlantic and conquer Hollywood. With his good looks, sharp wit, and unnerving vulnerability, he became a familiar face on beloved shows like HBO's Being Human and Looking. Audiences loved him for his relatability. He wasn't a flashy, untouchable idol. He was the kind of actor who made you believe that the characters were real, flawed, and human. For a moment, it felt like Russell Tovey was on the verge of becoming a global star. But then something happened. While other actors from Looking moved on to bigger projects, Russell's path stalled. He continued to work, yes, but never took on roles that matched his talents. His performances, emotional, profound, and incredibly authentic, could have propelled him to new heights. Instead, he became what Hollywood often does with gay actors, a reliable sidekick, rarely the center of the story. Part of Russell's story is tied to timing. When Looking debuted in 2014, it was billed as Sex in the City for gay people, a watershed moment for gay representation. Russell's performance as Kevin Matheson was heartfelt and nuanced, but the series was short-lived. And when it ended, instead of elevating the cast to new heights, it quietly faded into obscurity. Russell, who should have been positioned as one of the most diverse talents of his generation, was no longer given the attention he deserved. Then there's the hard truth about Hollywood itself. Russell came out as gay early in his career, something that should have been celebrated, but often came at a cost. Casting directors still cling to outdated notions of what a leading man should look or sound like. Often, openly gay actors are dismissed as too specific, too narrow, or worse, incapable of portraying straightforward romantic fantasies. Russell, with his working-class accent, his openness about his sexuality, and his refusal to conform to a Hollywood stereotype, doesn't fit the narrow mold. And though he continues to work regularly, starring in stage plays, appearing in Years and Years, doing extras. He rarely gets the leading roles that others with half his skills seem to get easily. He doesn't self-destruct. He doesn't give up. He simply played hard, and the system quietly pushed him over the edge. Russell Tovey's story is not one of failure. It's one of lost opportunity. He's still here, still working, still delivering performances that remind anyone who watches a movie of the depth he brought to the screen. But his absence from blockbuster leads and prestige roles says more about Hollywood than it does about him. Because if Russell were straight, it's hard not to imagine him starring in romantic comedies, dramas, and series. And that's what makes his story so poignant. Russell Tovey didn't disappear because audiences stopped caring. He disappeared because an industry still wary of authentic gayness couldn't figure out how to embrace him. So what can we learn from Russell's journey? For the LGBTQ+ community, it's proof that talent alone isn't enough. You still have to fight an industry built on outdated ideals. And for everyone watching right now, wherever you are in the world, leave 7 comments if you believe Russell Tovey deserves more than just a sideline. Because as long as we keep calling them names, silence will always win. George Shell, the boy band lover who was quietly pushed out. At the height of the boy band craze in the 2000s, he was a household name. As the shaggy-haired boy from Union J, often called the British version of One Direction, he had it all. A smile that melted teen magazines, a voice that won hearts, and a huge fan base. But while the other members of the group aimed for the flashy pop boy stereotype, George had something different about him. A gentleness, a quiet charm. A sense that he never quite fit the masculine mold the music industry constantly tried to force him into. Then came the turning point. In 2016, George posted a personal video to YouTube. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't a publicity stunt. It was heartfelt, a message in which he admitted he had loved both girls and boys and didn't feel the need to label himself. It was honest, raw, and vulnerable. The LGBTQ+ community embraced him immediately. But behind the scenes, the music industry's response was much colder. His career changed almost overnight, not with backlash, not with scandal, but with silence. Union J, already struggling after X Factor, never regained momentum. George's solo career stalled. He turned to radio hosting and small gigs, but the momentum faded. Why? Because George didn't fit the mold. He wasn't flashy enough to be the next big gay pop icon, nor was he willing to keep things ambiguous to maintain a fantasy image with female fans. And in boy band marketing, that fantasy image is only half the game. In 2018, George came out more clearly. I am gay. It was a resolution, but also a resignation. The world had demanded clarity, and when he spoke out, the silence only grew louder. Opportunities dried up. Industry support faded. He tried hosting, modeling, content creation, but nothing lasted as long as music. The world that had once supported him quietly moved on. And that's what makes George Shell's story so disappointing. He wasn't canceled. He wasn't scandalous. He was just an inconvenience. Too weird for traditional pop, too soft for rebel, too sincere for PR. And yet he had it all. The talent, the face, the fan base. But as soon as he stopped being everyone's ideal and started being someone's reality, the music industry turned its back. But George never disappeared. He's still here, still singing, still sharing, still being himself. And maybe that's the victory. Because George Shell may not have had the chart-topping solo career he deserved, but he created something arguably more important. A space where vulnerability, tenderness, and pride can coexist. Skip 4 if you ever rewind a Russell Tovey video just to see his smile. And if you still think George has more to offer, let the world know. Mientus, the Broadway prodigy, deserves more than silence. If you were a theater kid in the 2000s, or even just have a Tumblr account, you know his name. With his breakout role as Kyle Bishop on NBC's Smash and stellar Broadway performances in Spring Awakening and Les Miserables, Andy seemed destined to become one of the few openly gay stars who could easily transition from stage to screen. But after Smash, something strange happened. The show built a loyal following, and Andy's character, an aspiring gay composer with quiet strength, connected deeply with LGBTQ+ audiences. It was the kind of authentic, layered queer representation that Hollywood has always said it wants more of. Yet as the spotlight shifted, Andy's name didn't keep up. Of course he kept working. Guest roles, stage performances, even a role on The Flash as Pied Piper. One of the first openly gay characters in the Arrowverse. But those roles never became the breakout star many expected. The kind of stardom that, let's be honest, would have gone to a straight actor with half his style, charm, and following. Why? Because Andy Mientus didn't play it safe. He came out from the start, not in a way that was attention-grabbing, but in a way that said, "I'm not hiding." He married actor Michael Arden. He spoke openly about his gay identity, disability activism, and mental health. He didn't fit the carefully filtered image of what a marketable gay man was supposed to look like, and Hollywood didn't know what to do with it. He was too thoughtful to be considered an icon, too openly political to remain neutral, too proud to shrink into supporting roles. In an industry that often prized flashy performances or quiet inclusivity, Andy offered something different. A gay man who was completely in control of his story, unafraid to live it up. And ironically, that made him easy to overlook. His Broadway work continued. His novel The Backstagers received critical acclaim. But the big TV and film roles, the ones he was perfectly qualified for, never came. Directors and producers often say they're looking for versatile actors, which can be interpreted as, don't come out as gay. Andy did it explicitly. He did it intentionally. He never apologized for it. And that courage came at a cost. Not scandal, not cancellation, just the familiar Hollywood coldness, the kind that doesn't slam the door, but quietly slams it. Andy's influence, however, is undeniable. He created space for gay actors to exist outside of the old stereotypes. He proved that being gay, being politically active, and having artistic ambition are not mutually exclusive. And he's still here, still writing, still performing, still pushing for better stories and deeper representation. Drop a 9 if you think Andy Mientus deserved a major network show of his own, because being openly yourself should never mean quietly being written out. Matt Dallas. For a brief shining moment, he wasn't just a regular TV actor, he was the face of an entire generation. As the mysterious lead in Kyle XY, Matt captured the hearts of millions. The show was a cultural phenomenon in the mid-2000s, the kind of breakout role that often launched a young actor into a career filled with endless possibilities. He had the looks, the charisma, and the rare ability to connect with audiences of all ages. Fans weren't just watching a sci-fi teen drama, they were witnessing the birth of a Hollywood star. But then, silence. When Kyle XY ended in 2009, Matt Dallas could have turned his attention to movies, TV series, or even series. Instead, his career slowed down. The roles dwindled, the opportunities dwindled, and before long, one of television's most recognizable young stars quietly disappeared from the mainstream. Why? The answer is both painfully familiar and uniquely meaningful. For years, Matt had been trapped by the same Hollywood double standard that so many gay actors face. He was asked to keep his private life private. He was asked to play the part both off-screen and on. Studio executives and public relations experts warned that coming out could cost him his chance at a leading role. And like many before him, Matt complied, for a time. He smiled, dodged questions, and let the machines market him as a polished teen idol. But the silence was heavy, and secrets took their toll. In 2013, Matt Dallas came out, announcing his engagement to musician Blue Hamilton. It was a joyous moment, genuine, real, and brave. Fans celebrated, the LGBTQ+ community embraced him. But Hollywood? Hollywood's response was muted, too quiet. Rather than propelling him forward, his coming out seemed to freeze his trajectory. While straight actors with a breakout role often landed blockbuster franchises, Matt found himself relegated to smaller roles, indie films, and projects that never made a splash. He wasn't scandalous, he wasn't controversial, he was simply ignored. And that's the crux of Matt Dallas's story. He had everything the industry craved: talent, marketability, a loyal fan base. But when he chose authenticity over image, the opportunities that should have come didn't. He wasn't straight enough to continue promoting his heartthrob image, but he wasn't famous enough to be promoted as a gay icon. He fell into that gray area, one that Hollywood has yet to figure out how to handle. Today, Matt lives an authentic life. He's married, a father, and active on social media, where his openness and humor continue to inspire. He's still acting, still creating, still proving that talent and authenticity can coexist. But his lack of deserving roles, lead roles, prestigious projects, opportunities to make a name for himself, is one of Hollywood's silent injustices. Because Matt Dallas didn't perish for lack of talent or love. He perished because the system wasn't ready for him to live his life to the fullest. And maybe that's the lesson. Even in an industry obsessed with representation, authenticity still comes at a cost. Matt's story closes this list, but it also opens a question. How many talented men have been pushed aside, not because of scandal or failure, but simply because they choose to be themselves? Thanks for watching. If you believe these stories deserve more attention, drop a comment below. Who do you think was treated the most unfairly? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you won't miss the next video. Together, we can make sure these voices are never silenced.